My name is Rebecca Graham, and today we are going to talk about preserving historic buildings and the energy crisis. So, one of the biggest projects in historic preservation is the conservation of historic buildings and structures. For those in the field, the Whole Building Design Guide Historic Preservation Subcommittee describes these buildings as the ultimate recycling project. Unfortunately, most preservationists have to deal with the ideologies from others that think older buildings are inefficient and that fixing these high energy consuming buildings is a task not worth taking on. At the same time, most people would agree that historic preservation helps to open the eyes of individuals to value the past, but there is another aspect of the purpose of conservation, and that is to help those same individuals accept the responsibilities for the future. Looking towards the future, are these buildings helping or hurting our environment? And is there a happy medium where the two sides can meet and compromise? About 6% of the buildings that exist across America were constructed before 1920, and these are most of the buildings that we have come to love today in most of our museums and museum houses. There are three main ways of thinking when it comes to the dilemma of preserving historic houses, but the facts must first be stated and understood before diving into these ways of thinking. It is fact that buildings are the largest consumers of energy in the United States. In 2015, the United States Energy Information Administration reported that residential and commercial buildings made up 40% of total U.S. consumption of energy. Speaking monetarily of the nation's gross domestic product, the GDP, building construction takes up a fairly large portion of creating new buildings, and this is also a problem. The GDP is the total value of all the goods and services produced inside a particular country. Now, including making and procuring the resources and then constructing buildings, creating what we call the built environment in the United States takes up 22% of our GDP. Now, returning to the three different solutions in this conservation problem, there are really three ways to look at solutions for this problem. Either preserve the buildings as they were, destroy the buildings and construct new ones, or preserve the building but implement more green solutions. As commonly quoted in the conservation realm, the greenest building is the one that's already built. The middle ground on this issue, the third viewpoint, would be to retrofit the older historic buildings with energy-efficient components. By installing upgraded systems that are realistic and energy efficient, the overall consumption of energy can be diminished while the historic structure is conserved. This is a better method than destroying historic structure and a better one than creating new buildings. The fact of the matter remains that the total energy it takes to demolish a building is substantial, and one also has to account for the waste that gets added to our landfills and the energy needed to build something new in place of the old. Building a new structure requires new raw materials, finished products, it requires to transport everything to the build site, and it actually requires to build the structure. All of these things usually add up to a larger net use of energy. A lot of conservationists actually do fall into this third category, and it is becoming more and more of a popular opinion in practice. So when we're implementing this practice, where do we start? Well, the first step would be to analyze and evaluate the condition of the building as it is through a detailed assessment. The next step is to discover the difference between recycling and upcycling and implement both in the preservation work. Another step that can be taken is to educate those around you on the importance of looking at older buildings as a conservation project that can be saved. And as always, we should educate others on the ways in which history and the environment can be saved at the same time. The proper means of conservation for historic buildings is a problem, one that comes with many differing opinions. But the fact remains that keeping buildings the way they are and destroying buildings are both not good ways to fix this problem. The best method is to upgrade and introduce green technology and energy sources into these historic homes, and doing so in a way that does not alter the historic integrity of the building. The truth does remain. We cannot build our way to sustainability. We must conserve our way to it.